Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kay, and today I have the much anticipated Dark Age by Pierce Brown. I'm going to do a full review. I'm going to try to keep it spoiler free up front. I'll put a tag on the screen then when I go. So, Dark Age is the 5th book in the Red Rising series, 2nd in the secondary trilogy. Takes place directly after Iron Gold, which is set 10 years after the original Red Rising trilogy. And this book, this massive, nearly 800-page book, is just a giant, gory, bloody mess of a book. I loved it. So you could say there are kind of two sides to the story. You have the battles and the blood and the gore and people getting chopped up into pieces, and oddly enough, several characters seem to lose ears. That seems to be a thing that Pierce Brown was going for in this book. Severed ears. And then on the other side you have kind of the political side of it, the more thinking side of it. It's almost like a chess game. You got, different characters making their little moves and counter moves and setting plans into place kind of on the down low. So for me, that seemed to work really well though, because you would go from perspectives like Darrow and Lysander, who are on Mercury. You go from their perspectives and it's high action. It's lots of killing and people getting decapitated and cut in half and things like that. And then you would switch over to like Virginia's perspectives, which is much more the political side of it. She's, in charge of trying to convince the Senate to send relief ships to save Darrow and the Free Legions on Mercury, and they're resisting, and so there's going to be a vote, and she's trying to figure out how to get the votes that she needs to be able to send those ships to save them. You have 5 perspectives in this book. So you have Darrow and Lysander, who are on Mercury. You have Virginia, who's on Luna with the Senate, trying to convince them again to send ships. You've got Ephraim, who is the Grey who kidnapped Elektra and Pax. I don't think you get a perspective from Pax, but you do get a fair amount of interaction between Ephraim and Pax. And then you have Lyria, who is the Red who kind of got tricked into aiding Ephraim in kidnapping the kids. She is actually, along with Volga, a captive of Victra, who's Elektra's mom. And so you can imagine the state that they're in, because Victra is less than pleased that her daughter has been stolen. Ephraim, on the other hand, he's with the kids. They got picked up by the Obsidians, by Sephi's Obsidians, so they're off with them, kind of being held captive with them. So you kind of get to see some more of how the Obsidians' community and culture works, which is interesting. You didn't get as much of that before, so now you are definitely getting a bit more insight into that. I did find that interesting. But the main, so there's kind of those 3 main areas. And for me, it all worked pretty well together. You spent enough time in the one area to really get going in the story, and then just when you think you might be getting overwhelmed with, say, all of the carnage, it'll switch, and then you'll go and you'll spend some time where things are a bit quieter. Not always, but it's not as like high tension as, a million battle scenes or whatever. I think the only complaint that I really have about this book is you lose the sense of immediacy. Like, say a character gets stabbed to the chest, or they get their arm cut off, or they get their ears cut off, because that keeps happening. You don't feel it, because you know that as long as they don't die, as long as they don't die wherever they're at, you just have to get them back to your base or whatever, and they can get all that stuff replaced. Like, they'll just get a new robotic arm, or they'll get some, get new ears made, or grow more teeth, or, whatever is happening, it can probably be fixed, and they might have a scar, but that's about it. They're not gonna, walk around with no legs or something. So that's the only thing I can say that was kind of is that you lose the sense of horror from it, because you know that it's just gonna get fixed later anyway, and it's not a big deal. It felt to me a lot like The Expanse as far as this huge scope, because you're in space, you're on all these, different planets and stuff, and there's a lot of action, but at the same time, there's a lot going on with characters and with kind of an intricate plot with all the like little plans and the politics and things. It kind of gave me the same kind of vibes as the Expanse series, which is like my favorite sci-fi series. I love that kind of stuff. So for me, this was perfect. I know not everybody enjoys the complexities, but that's something that I'm drawn to. So for me, it was kind of... So I can't remember Iron Gold particularly well. I read it back in January of 2018, and for whatever reason, I just forgot to reread the first 4 books before getting this. I'm not sure how that happened. I definitely should have reread them, because that would have been helpful. I spent part of the beginning of the book, like probably the first, I don't know, every time a new character and a new perspective came in, or new characters were being talked to by our characters, it was like, who are you again? What were you doing? Where were we? I spent a lot of time, especially at the beginning, trying to remember where we left off and who people were. I still was able to enjoy it all because it did start to come back. Like, I was able to pick up from the context of the story what was going on. But it would have been nice if I would have used my brain and remembered to reread everything. But that being said, I still loved this book. I read this book as quickly as I could. I mean, I work 8 hours a day. I have a 7-year-old, so I have like other things going on. So I read when I could, and I think I read this in like 3 or 4 days, probably, which isn't too bad. And I loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars, definitely. And I definitely plan on rereading it. So I put on hold Red Rising audiobook. I'm gonna try the audiobook. I don't normally listen to fiction through audiobook because I have a hard time staying with the story. My mind tends to wander, or I'll get, like if I'm listening to it at work, I'll be working. I'm a designer, so I kind of get sucked into whatever I'm working on, and then sometimes I forget to listen. So I don't usually read fiction through audiobook, but I'm going to give it a try with Red Rising, seeing as how I have read them all before. The story should be at least kind of familiar, and we'll see how it goes. If I can get into the audiobooks, I'll do the reread this year, because I'll just listen to the audiobooks when I wouldn't normally be reading a physical book. If not, I'm going to push the reread then till next year. I plan on rereading a bunch of other books next year, so I'll just add this to that list. So 5-star read. Go out, read it. Probably read the first 4 books first, though, and definitely reread them if you have not read them recently, so that you can fully appreciate everything that's going on, because I'm sure I missed some stuff. So now, spoilers. I'm just going to go through kind of each of our perspective characters and kind of talk about their story throughout. I think that's the best way that I can do it, so that I remember to get everything that I want to get. So we'll start with Darrow, because he is the first like main perspective we get. Darrow is on Mercury. He's once again in like 1,000 hopeless situations, kind of one after the other, which just seem to happen a lot. Like, he should have died several times probably and didn't, but he's Darrow, and let's be honest, how many times should he have died in the original trilogy in Iron Gold? Like, if you're still hung up on that, it's not like it's something new. So Darrow, though, for me, is going through an interesting development, because we're seeing him start to question the things that he has done previously. He is older, he has a son that he doesn't have a great relationship with, and he's watching all of his friends die around him. So he's starting to kind of question the choices that he makes, and, should he continue to make choices in the same way? And we see a real turning point when he has the chance to maybe not crush entirely, but severely hurt Atalanta's forces on Mercury. He can do that, and he can quite possibly keep them from being able to attack the Republic, prevent this war. Or he can go over here and he can save his army. If he doesn't go, they're going to be destroyed and they're get wiped out. Does he sacrifice his army to potentially stop the war? Old Darrow definitely would have. He would have made that sacrifice because it was, for kind of the greater good, the bigger picture. In this book, though, he doesn't. he's kind of, I think with Severo leaving at the end of Iron Gold and saying some of the kind of nasty things that he said, which weren't necessarily deserved. I mean, kind of, but he was also a bit harsh. But I think it really kind of sank in with Darrow a bit, and so he makes a different choice. He decides to save the army. Instead of going off into war again and attacking, he decides to go save his army and help his friends. So that was nice to see him do that. His mercy, though, just kicked him in the ass, like, more than once. Here's this unknown gold. You know he's not part of, the Republic. He brought back the Fear Knight somehow. Like, no one can get the Fear Knight. And this random gold, who's not a warrior, who's not a peerless Scarred, manages to somehow overpower him and get him back. And while the rest of the people with Alexander died, it just was Alexander, who's almost dead, and this mysterious gold. You're not more suspicious. You're like, we'll just put a little monitoring thing in him and make sure we have cameras where he's going to go be at. Like, you can't overcome that kind of stuff. I mean, come on. They know it's going to be there. They know that you're monitoring them. Why is that to you sufficient? No, you should have killed him right there. Stab him in the face. Done. Don't take any chances. Don't take any risks. There's number one, bit you in the ass. 2, they've got all of the, like, captives, prisoners of war, right? All of these soldiers. And they keep them, and they keep them alive, and they sacrifice, their own radiation medicine, their own food that they are low on, and that they're like, we're barely going to last the week. And they're still giving it to these prisoners, which, yes, that's good. Moral high ground and all. Good. Except that then when Lysander, the little shit, comes in and mucks everything up, he has an army. Now there's an army there. And now look what's happened. Terrible things. Terrible, terrible. You almost died because of that. So maybe have a little less mercy. I mean, obviously, like, don't kill the citizens. Don't kill the civilians that weren't actively fighting against you. But maybe that dude over there who's actually trying to kill you, maybe you just kill him and call it good. Because there's no bringing them over from the other side. There are times to be ruthless, and I think Darrow could have afforded to be a little more ruthless sometimes. Lysander. I hate Lysander. He's a pompous, hypocritical, nasty little thing. I can't stand Lysander. I honestly don't remember him that much from Iron Gold, because I need to reread it, obviously. But in this book, like, everything, anytime we were in Lysander's perspective, I'm just like, I hate you, and you're ruining everything, and I hate you. And just his self-justification of why he's doing things. It's like, you betrayed Cassius. You are teaming up with Atalanta, who is a self-professed monster. She's terrible. She's horrible. Everyone knows it. And you're like, this is who I want to ally with because we're going to make the world better? Like, no, idiot. And then he goes down on Mercury and just keeps surviving, which is irritating. I just wanted him to die. I mean, he's not going to, but really wish he would have. I just kept rooting for him to die in the desert. I was a bit disappointed when he didn't get eaten by that Hydra. Like, he should have gotten eaten by the Hydra and then everything been fine, but whatever. So you have Lysander. And then he goes after the glory. He kills Alexander dishonorably, like big time. After all of his, high and mighty, I'm an honorable Iron Gold, blah, 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 blah. And then he shoots Alexander in the head. Oh, sorry, I don't have time. It's now inconvenient for me to be honorable, so see ya. Just gonna blow your head off and go. That was terrible. And then he's, like, seeking glory and trying to kill Darrow, and it's all about, he's this glorious... Then quit trying to say, like, you don't want to be sovereign, because if you didn't want to be sovereign, you wouldn't be out here, like, rallying people to you and trying to amass all this glory for yourself. Be real. And then the little icing on top there. he marries Atalantia. And then there's a sex scene. Why is there a sex scene? It was not necessary. It was not necessary, and I threw up in my mouth a little bit, like, reading it. Ugh. Nasty. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Gross. It was interesting for him to have the revelation from Kalendora that Atalantia and Kalendora actually killed his parents, and that it was because his mother was a reformer. So I am interested to see how that little brainworm will work its way in and maybe turn him a little bit to not be so hard up for the society, and maybe turn him a little bit more towards the Republic. But he's still married to Atalantia, so if he does not kill her in the next book, like, fairly quickly, I'll be supremely disappointed, because she killed your mom, and she was happy about it, and she didn't care. She did not feel any guilt over it. She was all, la la la. She killed your parents, and was fine with it. So, And then with Octavia, messing with his mind and using the chair on him to erase the memories of his mother. Also interesting. We'll be looking forward to how that plays out later. I don't know that Lysander can be fully redeemed for me, because I just hate him so much, but that would help if he would, quit being a pompous ass. That'd be good. So that's Darrow, that's Lysander. Next we'll go with Virginia. So I really enjoyed her perspectives, because hers were the more political, intelligent, kind of strategic things, I guess. That's what her perspective was more focused on. There was action, obviously, because she gets beaten to a bloody pulp by the mob during the Senate vote. She watches Daxo get his head cut off, which, R.I.P., so sad for that. And she has the whole throwdown with creepy clone Jackal and Lilith. So there is still action, so it still kept things moving, but it was a lot more about kind of the chess game, moves and counter moves, politics, which I find really interesting. So those were good. I don't blame her for leaving Severo and the Howlers behind. Like, what was she going to do? Yeah, she could have, like, rushed down there and tried to save them, but it wasn't going to work, because she was, like, barely functional at that point, barely able to move, and she was just going to die. And that does literally no one any good. So I support leaving. Hopefully they get Severo back. I don't know. If the Jackal and them figure out how to use the whatever that thing is called that Virginia developed to mess with his mind, to erase things, create some sort of sleeper agent out of him or something, I'll be extremely sad, and that would crush me. But we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm not really sure. But for Virginia, though, that was her main contribution to the story for me, was providing the counterpoint to all of the blood and gore and fighting. And I think it was done really well. I really enjoyed it. Next perspective would be Ephraim. I did enjoy his stuff. I didn't really remember him from Iron Gold hardly at all, but as I was reading, I kind of remembered a little bits and pieces here, but mostly it was like his interactions with Pax and how they kind of planned up this whole thing to where they could escape, and the fact that he kind of grew to really care about these kids and was trying to keep them safe and trying to escape from the Obsidians if it became necessary, but then also getting attached to the Obsidians and kind of almost sort of feeling like he's found kind of maybe a home with them. The scene where he eats the berries or whatever and gets really, like, high and jumps out of the ship and goes to beat down these killer robots, and he's got his sword and whatever, and it turns out it's just a mop. That was hilarious, and it definitely provided a nice comedic point, a little bit of lightheartedness that the book needed, and I can't wait to look up, like, fan art or something about that, because that's easily the funniest part of the entire book. Just Ephraim and his mop facing down killer robots. Anyway, but I guess the biggest thing about him is his connection to Volga, so he names his ship after her, which is adorable. He calls it Snowball, which is what he calls Volga, and that's so cute. And he goes out of his way to he's trying to get them back, Volga and Lyria, trying to get them back from Victra. He's trying to make sure that the kids make it home. So he's kind of shaping up to be more kind of honorable than you might initially have thought, because he is kind of like a mercenary, a freelancer. And then he dies at the end. Like, he goes back to the Obsidians to try to warn Sephi about Volsung Fa, and gets himself killed because no one's going to listen to him. And when he had, like, you know, he put the bomb in the White's pocket, and I'm like, but I don't think the White one is, like, close enough to Volsung Fa to kill him. He would have to be, like, right next to him, because he's so powerful. I mean, he's been living out in space, and he's just, I mean, it's kind of established prior to that he's almost, like, invulnerable to a point. It's very hard to even injure him. So I knew, like, he put that, I was like, damn, he's gonna die, because he's not gonna kill him. They need him for the next book. And Xenophon or something like that. Anyway, the White's not close enough to really do any serious fatal damage. And sure enough, yep, super dead. Watch the guy eat your heart. That's lovely. So that was a little kind of a disappointing death, I guess. It was like, oh, he was trying so hard, and he was trying to save Volga from having to deal with any of it, and it didn't work. So that leads us to Lyria. And through Lyria's point of view, you get Victra and Volga, and kind of their trifecta of fucking people up. So you get through Lyria's perspective, you've got then Victra and Volga. And this was probably, I want to say, one of my favorite parts of the book, was their kind of team up. And it was also the most heartbreaking because of what happens to Ulysses, just like a brand new baby, and he gets his head stomped in and then nailed to a tree. And that seemed really excessive. And I'm not gonna lie, when Lyria finds him, I kind of hope, like, I was holding out a little bit of hope that maybe he's not dead, because we're so used to, like, all the characters just don't die when they should die. So I was kind of like, well, maybe because, you know, he's a gold baby, that it won't have killed him. Like, she just thinks he's dead, but he's not. And but no, he sure is. And he's like, that's the saddest thing in the whole book, probably. But you see Victra become the ultimate badass and just destroy everyone in her rage and her revenge, which was really good. You've got the relationship between the three of them. They kind of start liking each other, especially like Victra and then the other two. Despite themselves, they kind of form this bond. So that was fun, kind of seeing more of a humanizing side of Victra, especially because, I mean, she's married to Severo. It takes a certain kind of person to, you know, be in love with Severo. There's a lot of violence and kind of just this feral rage. So it was really good to see a more humanizing side of Victra in this story. And then at the end, she, like, swims out to touch the sun, and that was just sad. If there was any point where I would cry at a book, it probably would have been that. I'm not usually a crier, though, so that didn't happen. But if I was going to, it would have been with that whole thing, all those circumstances going on. So focusing more on Lyria, I was really happy to see her go from being a victim and being more of, like, in the mindset of being a victim, letting things just happen to her, letting other people kind of control everything that was happening with her. She realizes that when she's in the cell on Victra's ship. It kind of finally hits her, oh, hey, I'm just letting all of this stuff happen to me, and, you know, oh, they're doing this to me, poor me, you know, not having any control. Realizing that and then fighting back against it. That was really good character growth to me, and then to see that continue throughout the rest of her perspective in her chapters, kind of fighting back against that. Then she gets the little robot spider thing in her head. I can't wait to see what all that can do, because it's damaged throughout the whole book, so it kind of helps her in a limited way. So I'm really looking forward to, in the next book, She's gonna, I'm assuming, go find out where to get it fixed. Pax is helping her figure that out, and she's gonna get it fixed, and then to see what it really does. I would assume that this is what Figment stole from Quicksilver. So I can only imagine that it does some crazy shit. I don't really know. We'll see. But that kind of gives her the physical side of the power. She's working on the mental side. Her plan with saving the child wives, I mean, that was all her. She was going to go in and she was going to give these girls the tools to fight back. She saved Victra, and she saved Volga. She was the one going in and getting them out of trouble instead of just waiting for someone else to do it. And I really like that kind of storyline, questioning victimhood. So I think that's all. Oh, no. The big surprise of Cassius not being dead. So, and also I want to talk about Lilith and Clone Jackal. But first, Cassius. Was it convenient that he showed up literally right as Darrow was getting ready to be killed? Yes, extremely convenient. Definitely happened because the plot needed it to happen. Needed to be able to get Darrow out of that situation, and there was literally no other way. But I was still happy to see it nonetheless, because Cassius is back, and I'm hoping that this means that we can get Cassius and Darrow moving, you know, kind of past all of the crap that happened before, that kind of split them apart because they were best friends before. I'd like to see that relationship built back up at least a little bit in the next book. I mean, I don't expect it to fully kind of just go away and they go back to being BFFs and everything's great, but I want to see them like being able to work together and all of that good stuff. Hopefully Cassius will have some influence over Lysander and get him to stop being a little jerk and to, you know, get his head out of his ass. That would be great. I'm not sure. I mean, he did spend 10 years with him, like raised him, but we'll see. But I was kind of happy to see Cassius back. So I guess from now on, if a character doesn't die on the page and you definitively know that they are in fact dead, don't assume they are, because Alexander came back and Cassius came back and frickin' Lilith came back with creepy clone Jackal. So that's the last thing I want to talk about, is Lilith and creepy clone Jackal, who's gross. So apparently Jackal like took some of his DNA and put it off in a little safe box and with instructions and all this crap and said, I'm probably gonna die, so if I do, Lilith, make a clone of me and bring me back. And so Lilith, being nasty and crazy, it just gives birth to the Jackal. And I really like the line where it was like, the only way you could get him inside of you was to grow him in your womb or whatever. That was amusing. And creepy. The whole thing is just gross, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I mean, it's not going to go down the same way as it did with the Jackal, because it's not the Jackal, it's his clone. And Lilith did not follow all of the instructions. So she did not, I mean, she tweaked things, she changed things to try to fulfill her own obsession with the Jackal. So things will be slightly different. I mean, he didn't grow up in the same kind of familial environment, things like that. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out, because they are in control of Luna right now. They've got, I think, their alliance with the Rim, because I think they took Earth right at the end. So they definitely have some power. So that's one of the factions now that have power that the Republic is going to have to deal with. So I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out, but it's weird and kind of creepy, and I'm not super into it. And then I want to end things with my favorite gross line from the book, and it's when Darrow is fighting in the streets of Heliopolis. I think he's trying to get to the square before he meets up with Lysander, and the Reds try to like pull him apart, or the civilians try to like pull him apart, and he doesn't allow that to happen, obviously. And then he starts obviously hacking them to pieces, and he says, I sewed them into my twitching meat carpet. And that's so gross, but oddly poetic, but disgusting, and I love it. Thank you, Pierce Brown, for that line. There's some other good ones, some other gems throughout, but that one just really struck home. I think I tweeted about it, because it's just, ugh. So that's where I'm gonna end things. 5 stars for Dark Age. Can't wait for the next one. Don't know how long it's gonna be, but I will be eagerly awaiting it. And I think that's all I've got. So thanks for sticking around, and like and subscribe down below if you want. Leave a comment, tell me what your favorite parts of Dark Age were if you've read it. If not, what are some of your theories or thoughts going in? And I will see you guys next time. See ya.